Good Tuesday to you. A special greetings to a brand new affiliate in our radio network, 92.3 FM WZPR, the home of Salem Radio in the Outer Banks, located in Nags Head. We love the Outer Banks, been there many times over the course of many years, and I'm very glad to be on. You folks have a very important Senate race coming up this year. You're always important in the presidential elections. I'm always paying attention to North Carolina. And Comfortably Smug, one of our friends from the Ruthless podcast, is a North Carolinian as well, and he always tells us about the great good things that are ongoing in North Carolina. Welcome aboard 92.3 FM WZPR. You'll hear me every day, 3 hours a day. You can watch if you ever want on the Salem News Channel as well, but if you're in your car or you're walking around the house and you're listening on the iPhone or got the earpods in, welcome aboard. Usually do the news, usually dive deep. Got a lot of guests, no different today. Not within the hour after I signed off yesterday, the disturbed individual walked into the Midtown office building and murdered 4 people, took his own life. He was looking for the NFL, as far as we can tell. A police officer was murdered at the scene. Blackstone executive, 2 other victims. Don't know much about the victims, but the officer has been feted. I also want you to know, I don't usually talk about the shooters on this program. Don't want to create any incentive for people I don't know, but his was a failed career, apparently, in football. Never got to the NFL, but you never know what's going on in a crazy person's head. Someone with profound mental illness, you don't know what's going on. A week ago, tomorrow, 3 officers, 2 of whom were sitting in their cars in Lorain, Ohio, were ambushed. And Michael Parker was the killer, and he killed Philip Wagner, and he seriously injured Peter Gale. They had an arsenal in his car, and nothing's written about that. That happens in Lorain, Ohio. If you have a shootout by a madman in Midtown Manhattan on Park Avenue, in the building with the NFL, you'll see a lot about it. You'll hear a lot about it. In both cases, the Thin Blue Line took a hit. A police officer was killed in both cases. 2 others were injured, one seriously in the Ohio attack. My friend Gallagher, Mike Gallagher, runs a fund for the fallen police officer. Gallagher's website will have all the details about that. Whenever an officer is murdered, Mike gets a check off to them immediately from his foundation. And I'm sure both, whether it's Lorain, Ohio, or New York City, doesn't matter to good Americans, ought to grieve the police and other victims, of course. And the only thing I'll say about this is that the killer in Manhattan was clearly cracked, psychologically impaired. I don't know what his mental illness was, mentally ill. I have to think the same thing about the killer in Lorain, Ohio last week, about which you haven't heard much. He was 28 years old. He was living with his parents. He had been cited for driving recklessly and hitting a motorcycle by one of the policemen he shot, but he was cited in 2022. So it's 3 years ago. He lost a civil suit in that case, and he's 28, so he was 25 at the time. He, basically driving food around. I can't remember what it was he was doing. I don't know if it was. I don't want to name a company because I'm not sure who he was driving for, but he got reckless, and one would infer that he nursed a grudge. One would infer from yesterday's killing that the killer nursed an imaginary grudge. And that's what happens in this world. And you can't draw any big items, any big lessons from either of these. I just want to note, grieve for every police officer who's ever been shot and killed, for their families, for the people who are left behind. If you care about that deeply, remember Mike Gallagher. I'm not going to replicate the fund. I did post the link for the GoFundMe for the Ohio officer in Lorain, Philip Wagner, because it came across my radar because I was reading the Cleveland.com pages, the sports pages, and I saw a note about it. I don't think anyone else has heard about that, right? If you're not from Ohio, if you don't know where Lorain is, if you're not reading Cleveland.com, you probably haven't heard about that. Everyone's heard about the Manhattan shooting. Now, only 1 officer was killed in both places, 3 other victims in Manhattan. There were 2 other victims in Lorain that weren't dead, but they were seriously wounded. There's an imbalance in coverage, but that's natural. Every media outlet in the world is in the city that never sleeps, and they're going to cover that kind of mayhem. And it's remarkable that only 4 people were killed, and that's something else because a fellow with a mental breakdown on his hands and I don't know, it was some kind of rifle, long gun in Manhattan. It's pretty hard only to kill 4 people, unless you're just completely blinded by voices in your head. The lying in wait and ambush in Lorain, Ohio, voices in the head again. It reminds me of Gabby Gifford's shooting, where a schizophrenic person just heard voices and went over and killed a federal judge, shot and wounded Gabby Giffords. This happens in the United States. It's not uncommon, sadly, but we have to be aware of it. That's why I always believe in. I got some people get mad at me. I think red flag laws are necessary for people, but I'm not telling you that they will always work. They won't always work. I doubt very much that either of these people would have flunked the background test. I doubt it very much because no sign of any prior violence on their part. We'll see more as the days and the months go ahead. I also want to let you know, especially our new listeners down in the Outer Banks, that I cover Israel a lot. I cover it in depth, and I talk to a lot of people about it. I am following the idiocy of Europe right now. Hamas is holding on to 20 innocent people. They've got 30 bodies. Hamas started a war on 10/7/23. Thousands of Gazans have died. All 2.1 million Gazans are suffering. Hamas is down to about 15,000 terrorists in a population of about 2.1 million people. Gaza is 140 square miles. Now, you may not know how big 140 square miles is. So for reference sake, Disney World in Florida, it's 43 square miles. So you've got 3 Disney Worlds, but you've got 2.1 million people. I tried to do some research today on the number of structures in Gaza. There are 254,000 structures in Gaza in September of 2023, according to the UN's Office of Satellite Imagery. So they had 254,000 structures in 140 square miles. It is one of the densest places on Earth. It is more dense than Manhattan. It is more densely populated than Hong Kong. It is a concrete jungle. Now, it's even more dense than you can imagine because there's lots of space on which you can't build near the ocean. In between, if you've seen, there are 4 or 5 different cities. Some are not really cities, but there's Gaza City, and then there are 3 or 4 other cities that we've learned all about. And Israel can't find 20 people there, even with the greatest intelligence in the world. They haven't got the assets there. They might. They've rescued a couple. They've had 3, I believe, hostages rescued, and they've repatriated 220, I believe, of people who've been saved over the course of the years. But they can't get much further. And so the question is on the table in Israel. What are we going to do? I'm going to talk with Aviv Redigur about this tomorrow. But they've got about 300 miles of underground tunnels. They've got 254,000 structures, and the IDF is looking for 20 people. Why is it an unsolvable problem? Because Israel will not use the tactics that were used in World War II, or were used in Vietnam, or were used in the Gulf War, where the civilian combatant ratio of death was far higher than 1 to 1. So more than 1 civilian was killed for every combatant killed. And Israel's kept its ratio of civilian to combatant loss below 1.1 to 1 in Gaza. But if they keep it up this way, they'll never find those 20. And because aid is being restored at phenomenal levels to prevent famine hasn't occurred there yet, they're going to steal it, they're going to sell it, and those 15,000 terrorists are still going to hold all 2.1 million people in Gaza captive. There's no way around it. There is no solution, and declaring that you're for a 2-state solution is stupid and ignorant and rewards Hamas. I'll talk about that more in the course of the show, but I wanted to give you just some Some basics. 2.1 million people. There are about 436,000 housing units. Some of those are, of course, apartment buildings. That's the jungle that the IDF can't find 20 people there. They can't abandon them. Hamas will never return them. It's not Israel's fault. It is the terrorists' fault. That's where the blame lies. Joined by Noah Rothman, senior writer for National Review. Noah, I understand you're sweltering in New Jersey. You're in a heat dome. Is that correct?
I'm deep in the heat dome. Yeah, it's pretty brutal, and it's only going to get worse. Although here we're going to have Southern California temperatures by the end of the week, so I just got to struggle through this.
Yeah, as I said out there, we in Ohio we just call this August, but you folks in New Jersey, you want to make a thing about it, go to the shore. No, I want to talk to you about two things: tariffs and Gaza. We might not get to Gaza, but I'm going to start with tariffs. I listened to the editor's podcast while preparing for today's show. I shared Charles's worry that President Trump has usurped congressional authority when it comes to tariffs, and I wonder whether or not the First Circuit will strike it down. And I share your Chicago school disdain for most tariffs as being distortive of the market. However, I'm a pragmatist. And do you know how much money the tariffs brought in June?
Oh, I remember coming across this figure. It was in the hundred billions, 200 billion, something like
It's
that.
100 billion thus far this year,
Yeah.
27 billion in June, and it's beginning to ramp up. Now, my
Yeah, I'm not
alternative way of
celebrating that, Hugh,
thinking,
because it comes out of my pocket.
well,
We pay
but
that.
I'm
It's a
saying,
tax increase that Republicans passed, and I don't like that.
and we just got a tax cut. I'm very happy. My number one issue is always national security, and the number one bad guy is China, and the number one thing that international trade is not zero trade barriers, but shipping, logistics, the free seas. And the people who defend the free seas is us, primarily. I mean, Singapore has some submarines, and Great Britain's got an aircraft carrier, and Australia's got some submarine. But we protect freedom of navigation, right? Is it possible to think about tariffs, especially in the EU context, as the NATO expenditure they're not been paying for year after year after year, and that they finally are going to pay?
Well, those are two separate issues, are they not? The redevelopment of the defense industrial base and what Republicans have long wanted to see from Europe, which was a stronger ally that would take a more proactive role in its own defense, but in defense of the interests that we establish, that we dictate, and that they steward. I mean, that's what we should want. So engineering a schism of relations in order to incentivize more military spending on the part of Europe seems to be cutting off our nose to spite our face. But that's a separate issue
No,
from these tariffs. These tariffs have more to do with
I don't.
consumer products.
I know. I view it as a way to get money out of Europe that they should be, because there is in this tariff deal yesterday massive weapons purchases. And globally, there's $27 billion last month that we don't have to spend that's going to go into deficit reduction. And I know you say that consumers pay it, and I agree, classical economists would say that. But we also have good substitution, so I don't necessarily have to pay it if I don't want a European car.
Well, so I would push back on that by noting that the deal that we inked with the EU, to the extent that we know its terms, a lot of this is opaque. But there are
Correct.
strategic exemptions in that deal, and we have a functionally now a free trade relationship with Europe for our strategic exemptions, with the exception of steel, which is somehow not considered a strategic resource by this administration and is subject to a 50% tariff. I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. But if we are operating under the assumption that free markets cannot meet the demands of a deteriorating international threat environment, then why are we creating free trade zones for strategic resources that are designed to meet that threat? We have a piece in the September issue of National Review by Arthur Herman that indicates the degree to which America's private industries have in the past and should in this moment meet the demands of our security establishment, because our defense contractors are simply not going to be up to the nature of the job. I've said that a lot, but Arthur Herman has articulated it in ways that are very accessible, and I recommend everybody reaches out to it. But we're talking about the
And
private
Arthur
market
wrote the
meeting
book. He,
an
he
international
literally
threat.
wrote the book on how we became the arsenal of democracy. So I will read Arthur about that because he's an expert on that. But just play with my intellectual framework for a moment. We're getting a lot of money that we otherwise wouldn't get from Europe, and around the world, and we're paying for the world's freedom of navigation. So if in fact they're one-sided deals, and Europe sure is screaming a lot about how one-sided this deal is, ought we not to consider this to be their long overdue contribution to defending the world's free trade order?
I will make a concession on that front. Insofar as this deal involves my colleague Andrew Stuttaford, as you heard, is skeptical of the degree to which these commitments can actually materialize and be met. But nevertheless, it's welcome to see Europe commit to the purchasing of U.S. energy exports and the investment in the U.S. energy industry that it would subsequently patronize. That will put increased pressure on Russia, which still continues to export energy exports to the continent and enjoy the revenues from that. So there's a lot to be said for that aspect of the deal. But by and large, trade is not a zero-sum game. It is not something that you win or lose in an agreement. It is a mutually beneficial condition in which everybody benefits. So even approaching this from the framework of who wins and who loses is deleterious to the free trade regime. You're going to foster resentments among those who perceive themselves to have lost, and then they will no longer see the benefits of a free trade regime. It's the sort of thing, because nations have honor, nations have dignity, nations prize intangible resources like respect in ways that I don't think a lot of people who consider themselves realist fully appreciate. But wars have begun over less.
Oh, yeah. Well, Adiger. We can go through a whole bunch of idiotic
The
reasons to start a
Peloponnesian.
war.
Let's have Victor Davis Hanson on to talk about it.
Yeah, but my point is the free rider effect is also part of classical economists. You know, the tragedy of the commons is everybody wants the free trade to go across oceans that are protected by a superpower. We're the superpower. NATO's supposed to be paying 2%. They never paid 2%. Now they've said 5%. I'll believe it when I see it. Until then, we have
we
tariffs.
can't even meet that obligation, Hugh.
No, we can't.
Something like 3% of GDP, and we will not be spending 5% of GDP on defense. So we'll be setting
No, we
obligations
won't,
for
but
ourselves that we will not be able to meet. And then the Europeans will say,
that
well, you're not
doesn't
meeting
let
it.
them off the hook. We're still carrying the burden. It is our legacy burden that we accepted and we've carried, and they were supposed to share with us that they didn't. So I think it's an IOU coming due on Europe. Moreover, I didn't hear anyone mention non-tariff trade barriers. For example, Europe's got a bunch of pesky regulations about ag products that cannot be brought in with genetically engineered seed. Isn't this resetting? A lot of that's made up, Noah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. A lot of it is made up. A lot of it is very deleterious to the developing world, which a lot of these nations bite on these conspiracy theories, block the importation of genetically modified seeds, which are not chemically engineered seeds. They're just seeds that are resistant to certain bacteria or viruses or what have you, and or have certain nutritional value that is otherwise lacking. And you have countries that have eschewed that, and their citizenry suffers as a result. You could say the same thing about the organic farming craze that collapsed Sri Lanka's economy a couple of years back. These are the sort of things we should discourage. I would hope that we would also discourage, for example, our own distortive market practices, like the entire corn industry. All of Europe has reason to resent America's corn subsidies and the degree to which we divert that into inefficient ethanol fuels. So everybody's got grievances when it comes to the agricultural sector. Those are the sorts of things that are worked out over generations of trade talks.
Am I wrong to believe that I know the GATT 1, GATT 2, GATT 405 is supposed to
Takes
do that.
Takes forever to negotiate a trade deal. Yeah.
But Japan has never let rice in. They never let rice in because we hear again and again and again, rice is what we need to make here in Japan. No, I always listen to the editors. I always find it fascinating. I always love that Charles makes the point that no one seems to hear. The tariff power is explicitly delegated to Congress. They are not doing this. This is Donald Trump under the national security exemption. Do you folks believe that the federal courts are going to strike him down in doing this?
I am not an expert in this realm, but I'm not confident of that because Charlie's correct that this power has been delegated constitutionally to Congress, but through statute over the course of several generations, Congress has delegated this authority to the president or its executive agencies. The agencies shall determine. So I don't think that the courts will necessarily be able to say, look, you've delegated your authority improperly. I wish they would, but I think that that would be a bridge too far for at least this Supreme Court. I don't think they would be inclined to adjudicate an issue of separation of powers like that. I could be wrong, but it's my impression that that is not going to be forthcoming.
You see, Charles always brings it up, and I always say to myself as I listen, and I'll talk to him the next time he's on, well, if the European trading partners, who have got very good lawyers, in fact, the same lawyers our people have, They all work for the same mega firm, big law that combines every Anglo common law jurisdiction one way or another. Their offices in every major European country, and they're in the United States. If they thought it was unconstitutional, they would have told Europe to hold out, right? Because it would be struck down. So it's not going to be struck down. So Trump basically has been delegated this power. I'm just being practical. I think he's getting a pretty good deal for America, and I don't think it's going to hurt me, Hugh Hewitt. How's it going to hurt Noah?
Oh, it's going to hurt me because my precious Spanish Riojas and Bordeaux's are going to be more expensive. They may be $2 to $3 more expensive per bottle. Who knows? I'm being facetious, but we are beginning to feel the effects of these tariffs, in part because they don't make a ton of sense from a strategic point of view. We have exempted all our high-performing sectors with regards to the European deal and the Chinese deal, all the stuff that really makes money, where the United States is very competitive, high-end goods like planes. That stuff's off the table. What we have effective tariffs on now is the stuff where we are not competitive, where the United States doesn't produce the sorts of things that we consume: furniture, toys, tools, machine parts, auto parts. Those are the sort of things that we outsourced over the course of a globalized economic revolution that spanned 30 years, to countries that have a competitive advantage of that, so that we could focus on the things that make us a lot of money. We have not focused on those things because they don't make us a lot of money, because there's not a huge labor force in excess that is ready to go into these shops and start assembling toys. We just don't do that anymore.
There is a middle ground there.
I
don't want to talk about toys.
So now
but
we've made all these things more expensive, and we have no way to attract those industries. The whole point of tariffs as a tool of statecraft is to make it more expensive for you to import foreign goods to create and develop these industries domestically. We don't want a domestic toy industry. We don't want a domestic little screw industry.
I've got some friends at Hasbro in Rhode Island that would disagree with you, but Noah Rothman has stuck around with me. Noah, you and I agree on almost everything when it comes to trade and tariff. But I do point out there's a middle ground here where maybe Trump is smarter than we are when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Last week, AstraZeneca announced a $50 billion investment in manufacturing facilities for pharmaceutical production in the United States, primarily in Virginia, but other states. Glenn Youngkin was doing somersaults, so was Donald Trump. AstraZeneca's CEO came over to announce it. Is that not what tariffs are supposed to do?
Well, tariffs, we wouldn't be able to do that. Listen, the pharmaceutical industry wouldn't be able to say, in Europe, wouldn't be able to say, these pharma tariffs aren't so bad because most of us have a presence in the United States, so we can get around them, right? They wouldn't be able to say that unless they already had a presence in the United States. So no, tariffs are not incentivizing the development of a European pharmaceutical presence in the U.S. It was here already. It may create and incentivize the expansion of those programs, but it's not as though they didn't exist. What we're doing with
parsing very fine, Noah. If they've added 5,000 jobs.
I reject it. They had responded to economic incentives initially that were there in the first place. We didn't need tariffs to create that incentives. What tariffs do is arrest the organic development of the domestic and international economy and substitute someone else's vision in Washington for what the economy should look like. We call that industrial policy. You might as well call it central planning. It is the same thing, and it doesn't work. It creates inefficiencies and bottlenecks, and it reduces economic growth. That's what tariffs do.
That's a classical statement of free market.
There's a lot of downsides.
I believe that, but I also believe it's very much more complicated than that, and that we ought to give at least some space to the idea that maybe it will work. Now, I got to ask you about the most important thing on today's agenda. There is a story in the Times of Israel. Experts say Gaza at worst case scenario, famine about to cause widespread death. Calling for urgent action now. Integrated Food Security Phase Classification. IFSPC says situation in the Strip is unlike anything we have seen in this century, comparing it to Biafra, etc. Have you ever heard of the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, and B, do you believe it?
I sure have, Hugh. The IPC in March of 2024 alleged that famine was imminent in Gaza. It turns out that it was not, and the outlet later confessed the conditions that it anticipated developing would not develop. Exactly a year later, the IPC came out again and said that there was famine imminent in this country. Indeed, 14,000 babies would die in the next 48 hours. You can go check this claim. It was the IPC and they retailed it. And the BBC published it unreservedly. Only later did they ask for a little bit of explanation, and it turns out that it wasn't babies, it wasn't 48 hours, it wasn't death. It was all of these things were sort of possible. but exaggerated, and would take place over the course of 12 months along a straight line trajectory if conditions never changed. And they did, of course, change. Now we have the IPC saying that a famine is inevitable. And fortunately for the IPC, there's a little bit more verifiable evidence on the ground that shortages are becoming a source of real hardship for Gazans and malnutrition on the ground in Gaza. Israel's getting a lot of heat for this, but I'm quite sure that the degree of it has been exaggerated, because it is always exaggerated. That is not to say there is no hardship or harm on the ground in Gaza. Gazans are suffering dearly, and indeed there's not nearly enough aid on the ground for them to get at it. But why? The UN said it was not moving these trucks in order to supplement the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has distributed a US-based Israel charity, which has distributed 100 million meals over the course of 2 months to this 2 million population. Nevertheless, it's not enough. Why was the UN trucks not moving? They're sitting on 900 tons of aid. Why? The IDF says that the United Nations did not believe that security corridors the IDF had cleared were secure, so it stopped transit. In other words, the UN agency was attempting, among other things, but this particular reason rankled me, was attempting to say that Israel's security priorities were not its own, and until those changed, the aid would not move, securing for itself, holding this aid hostage to extort Israel into changing its security priorities for the benefit of the United Nations functionaries. This is a rogue element. The United Nations is on Hamas's side. It is deeply invested in the preservation of this terrorist group, and the terrorist group is deeply invested in the maintenance and preservation of the UN authority that distributes aid, and indeed allows Hamas to pilfer it and extort the public by selling it back to them. This has been a long-running story, and we're now it's getting to the point at which it's almost accepted at face value that Israel is engineering a massive famine for strategic and tactical purposes in Gaza. It's an unquestioned shibboleth among a particular set
I
of
agree with everything you said.
commentators.
I also think that Great Britain joined France today in declaring they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. Israel is losing in the international information space. And there's no way to get around it.
And this is a result of it is. And I sympathize with Netanyahu's tactic here. I believe that he thinks, and in Jerusalem believes, that Hamas holds onto its power because it extorts the public with this aid, and they wanted to throttle that. I understand it, but it has backfired. It has resulted in a PR.
I don't know if it's backfired. I don't know that there's an alternative. We'll continue to talk about it. Thank you for the addendum to our tariff talk. Noah Rothman, National Review. Go listen to the editors for a full discussion of tariffs in today's edition of The Editors. Vice President Vance was in Canton, Ohio today. Got a reporter asking him about Epstein. Good exchange. Cut number 9.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. Julie Carr-Smythe from the Associated Press. I guess I'm going to be that person. There are some protesters outside accusing the GOP of protecting pedophiles, and we're wondering what you think are the reasons the U.S. government should shield the client list of Epstein from the public, and what you have to say about any relevance to that here today.
Well, let me say just a couple of things. First of all, the president has been very clear. We're not shielding anything. The president has directed the attorney general to release all credible information, and frankly, to go and find additional credible information related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. He's been incredibly transparent about that stuff, but some of that stuff takes time. You've got to assemble that stuff. You've got to compile that stuff. You've got to redact some victims' names so that you protect the victims. But the president has been very clear. He wants full transparency. He's asked that from the attorney general, and I know, because I talk to her all the time, the attorney general is hard at work on that issue right now. But I think I got to make an observation that there's an interesting thing about this case that the American media seems to totally ignore. For 4 years, under Joe Biden's Department of Justice, the media didn't give a damn about the Epstein files or about the Epstein case. For literally 20 years, the story about this scumbag, and he is a scumbag pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, he's dead now, but for 20 years, you had Obama and George W. Bush's Department of Justice go easy on this guy. They didn't fully investigate the case. They didn't show any curiosity about the case. And now Donald J. Trump is asking his Department of Justice to show full transparency. And somehow that's a criticism of Donald J. Trump and not Barack Obama and George W. Bush. If you want to criticize the people who aren't showing full transparency, you ought to go after the administrations that went easy on Jeffrey Epstein, the administrations that concealed this case for 20 years, and the administrations that failed to show full transparency. Donald J. Trump, I'm telling you, he's got nothing to hide. His administration has got nothing to hide, and that's why he's been an advocate for full transparency in this case. He's going to keep on being an advocate for full transparency, but while we're focused on that case, Donald J. Trump is also worried about making sure these great workers get more take-home pay and better jobs, and that's the focus of the administration. Thank you.
I would say that Vice President Vance has done a very good job as being a spokesperson for the administration on that question. Let me be a spokesperson for webroot.com for a moment. Go to webroot.com/Hewitt, webroot.com/Hewitt. It is going to provide you with everything that you need when it comes to securing your computer. Right now, you get 50% off Webroot Total Protection or Webroot Essentials when you go to webroot.com/Hewitt. Every 2 seconds, an identity is stolen in America. It takes about 100, sometimes 200 hours to resolve an identity theft. They are a nightmare, right? You do not want to lose your identity to the identity thieves who are banking your information on the dark web and waiting to steal it or execute some kind of fraud, which is why Webroot provides all sorts of things. A system optimizer, a password manager, identity protection with advanced dark web monitoring, rapid credit alerts, up to $1 million in reimbursement for lost, stolen funds. Webroot Essentials will not interrupt your daily life. It's 6 times quicker than any alternative product. Get Webroot Essentials or Webroot the Max at webroot.com/Hewitt. That's webroot.com/Hewitt. The Max is called Webroot Total Protection or Webroot Essentials. Take your choice at webroot.com/Hewitt. Let me also, while I'm doing a pitch, remind you that the folks in Texas are suffering. There is an ongoing disaster in the hill country of Texas, and our friends at Food for the Poor continue to ship aid to their partner in San Antonio to get it to the people who have lost everything and to the first responders. It is an ongoing crisis. Give a listen to this.
The debris is still slowly being removed along the Guadalupe River, and the many volunteers who rushed here are helping residents cope in ways both big and small.
Just tons of people helping out.
Homeowner Greg Adkins, whose home was badly damaged, has literally been surrounded by fellow Texans coming to lend a hand. Those volunteers offer hope, comfort, and relief.
If you can't get to Texas, you can send $50 in a box of supplies as a result. Food for the Poor is very good at this. We trust them. I trust them. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I contribute to them. You can do that by going to the Help Texas button at the top of HughHewitt.com. Help Texas, it's a banner. Or call 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. One more time, 855-359-4673. Also, boy, oh boy, do I need my relief factor. Hamstring, as I told you about, gone out. T-Rex Teddy. I got 3.5 hours with him this morning. I didn't have to do my miles. I didn't have to do my trundle. I just wanted to be, I'm basically the assignee. Teddy, my 3-year-old grandson, is just, I am his shadow, or he is my shadow. And we did everything together for 3.5 hours. I'm remarkable. I'm stunned that I'm sitting here in a tie and a coat talking to you and that I've recovered. 3-year-olds are unique. They're uniquely energetic, especially right after they wake up and right when they go to bed. But bumps, bruises, and every kind of game you can possibly play outside, we did. That's why I'm taking my relief factor. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can see it's 4 pills. If you are new, if you're our new affiliate, 92.3 FM WZPR in the Outer Banks, Nags Head, I'll tell you about Relief Factor every single day, every single hour. So get used to it. I'm going to talk you. I'm going to jawbone you into trying it because it's fabulous. Only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. The only one I take, and I encourage you very much to give it a try. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. All 4 are natural supplements. They're all doctor recommended. They do great things for your body. They help your body's anti-inflammatory system mostly recover. As I told the audience yesterday, pulled a hamstring somehow on Sunday. Probably has something to do with T-Rex Teddy. But one way or the other, I don't know how, I'm limping around a little bit, but I'm game for the games. I am up for it. That's my job. Highest and best use is being a grandfather with a 3-year-old. And that's why you need Relief Factor. 3-week starter supply, $19.95. If you call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or you go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Tom Homan, the border czar, was on Fox News today with Lawrence Jones. He had this to say about the number of people and who they are being detained by ICE. Cut number 12.
So I looked at the numbers yesterday, Lawrence. Here's where we're at. 70%, 70% of the people we're arresting are criminals. Hard stop, 70%. Who are the other 30%? The other 30% are national security threats. Like we've arrested over 300 Iranian nationals. These are people who are national security threats based on intelligence, based on other information. These are people we have to take off the street, that we have to deport. Who's the rest of that 30%? These are people who had due process at great taxpayer expense, and a judge ordered them removed. A federal judge said they must be deported. So our job is to deport those people. So we're executing the laws issued by Congress, enacted by Congress. We're arresting 70% criminals, and the rest are national security threats, and those were final orders. But the left will make you seem like we're all arresting, innocent people, disappearing people, kidnapping people. But the facts are the facts. ICE is prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats, and the numbers prove it.
Tom Homan, always on point. Meanwhile, Steve Hilton, running for governor in California, had this to say today, cut number 14.
It is absolutely outrageous that Gavin Newsom is trying to do this in California. Even today, the electoral districts in California are totally gerrymandered in Democrats' favor. We voted in California in 2008 for independent redistricting. The Democrats hijacked that. So now, for 40% of the vote in California, Republicans only have 17% of the House seats. Gavin Newsom wants to make it even worse so that Republicans have just 7% of the House seats for 40% of the vote. It's unconstitutional because the California Constitution says you can only change the districts once every 10 years. It's illegal because we have this independent so-called districting process. And so I've made it clear, if he tries to go ahead with this, I'm going to block it. I'm going to file a lawsuit. We're going to get an injunction. It can't happen. I won't let it happen. And by the way, when I'm governor...
Here's Steve Hilton. I love it, the fact that we did. In fact, I was a Californian when that passed. It went into the Constitution over my objection because I think legislatures ought to do this. But Steve Hilton is right. It is in the California Constitution. Governor Newsom cannot change it. I want to tell you about another sponsor of mine, Americans for a Balanced Budget. They have a website up, stophealthcosthikes.com, stophealthcosthikes.com. You know what it's about? It's about one thing. Obamacare screwed up American health care royally. But for the 24 million in the exchanges, the state exchanges, they don't get Medicare, they don't get Medicaid, they don't get employer-provided insurance, they're not covered by the VA. That means they're out of luck unless they go to the state exchanges and buy their policy there. Those policies can be prohibitively expensive, and the way that Congress has in the past made it affordable for the people they screwed when they passed Obamacare is to adopt tax policy that gave health cost credits. Now we do not want those tax credits to go away. We want them to be included either in the minibus or the next reconciliation. To find out more, please visit stophealthcosthikes.com. Brought to you by Americans for a Balanced Budget. That's stophealthcosthikes.com. Welcome, especially to our new affiliate, 92.3 FM WZPR in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Headquartered is in Nags Head. One of the people that you will hear from me about, hear from every week if you listen to the Hugh Hewitt show to my new audience, is David M. Drucker, senior political writer for The Dispatch. David, since we are talking about a North Carolina affiliate, let's start with the Senate race in North Carolina, which is going to be a big one. And Roy Cooper, the governor, former governor, has jumped in, and Michael Whatley, the chair or co-chair of the RNC still, I think, has jumped in. How's it look to you there?
Well, it's a competitive race, and what's significant about it is the map for Democrats in terms of trying to win back the Senate, the map of states up for election in 2026 is not good for Democrats. The map isn't always determinative, something Mitch McConnell, during his many years as leader, would tell me every couple of years when I would interview him about an upcoming election. But if Democrats are going to make even a remote play to cut down the Republican majority, let alone win it back, they're going to have to win in North Carolina. The one thing they can say is they got, at least on paper, the best possible recruit in former Governor Roy Cooper. Michael Whatley will be the Republican nominee. I don't expect any Republicans to challenge him because he has President Trump's backing. He is still the Republican National Committee chairman, so curious who's going to replace him in that role. But this is going to be a huge race. It's going to be super expensive. And again, if Democrats aren't winning in North Carolina on Election Day 2026, they're not winning the Senate, and they're possibly not even cutting into the Republicans' 3-seat majority.
Well, former Governor Cooper is welcome on this program anytime. I'm sure Chairman Whatley will be on. He's been on before. I'm sure he'll be on a lot. And we cover the state from the Outer Banks now up to Asheville, so I hope they come and join us. Let's talk about my vacation land, Maine. Now, I love Maine. I love Susan Collins. St. Susan, we call her. I don't believe Janet Mills was going to get in, but you wrote about it either this week or last. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I wrote about it for Bloomberg Opinion, my weekly column there. And look, Susan Collins is this white whale for Democrats, to use the Moby Dick analogy. Maine on paper, Maine is just actually a blue state. Now it's split, right? Because that second congressional district is a +10 Trump district, but overall the state is a Democratic state. And so this is where Democrats have to be competitive again, especially with a poor map, if they're going to have a chance to retake the Senate. But Susan Collins is very good at her job, both on the Hill and as a campaigner. She's savvy, she's battle tested. She hasn't announced her reelection yet. And there is some skepticism that she's an automatic reelect announcement coming, just given that she's been very frustrated as chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee in dealing with the White House, where she feels they're trying to infringe on her turf. But she has a super PAC. She has a 501c4, a political nonprofit, and she's ready to go. And the question is, who can the Democrats get to run? Jared Golden, who would have been the best to run against her, he's the Democrat in the second district, the incumbent House member, wouldn't run against her. He actually worked for her in the past, so he wasn't going to run against her. Janet Mills is not expected to run. She's almost 80 years old, and I think that may have something to do with it. And so Democrats are trying to figure out what they have there. But without somebody formidable, the bottom would really have to drop out underneath the Republican Party in 26. I mean, not just a Democratic wave year, but a 2010 style dropout that Republicans were able to profit from in 2010 for them to have a chance at beating Collins absent a really good candidate, and they don't even have that yet.
Yeah, I can't quite remember the name of the Democrat who ran against Susan Collins 6 years ago. Penegry?
Sarah Gideon, and she raised
Gideon.
tens of millions of dollars to the point where she couldn't spend it all. And Collins still beat her by almost 10 points. And it was a rough atmosphere
That's what
for
I mean.
Republicans in that race.
It's if you raise $20 million, which I believe she did, Collins' opponent did, Golden, not Golden. Who was it? What's her name?
Sarah Gideon, and she raised well more than 20. I mean, she raised a ton. She still has money in her campaign account that she's been giving to charity and nonprofits and other things, because she literally ended the campaign, I think, with maybe 10 million in the bank, 8 million in the bank, something like that.
And the reason for that, and you probably have explained this better than I can, there's only so many points you can buy on TV in Maine. There's really only Portland, and there are a couple of smaller stations way up in the county, and then down east there are some radio stations, and there's social media, and there are platforms. I mean, you can find the people who are watching Apple TV, et cetera, but there just isn't anywhere to spend the money. It isn't North Carolina with 5 or 6 different major markets in North Carolina. Am I right about that?
Yeah, correct. It's not Georgia. I mean, it's not even Ohio. It's a state with 2 congressional districts. You could buy a little Boston, I think, do a little damage that way. It's hard. It's also a state where people feel like they know their members of Congress, and where they like the fact that maybe their member is important. And Susan Collins, always a swing vote on major issues in the Senate. And I think Mainers like that, but also she works it hard, right? She hasn't disappeared to Washington and never come back. And as somebody who supports her was reminding me recently, she's never missed a vote in 25 years. or
Yeah, I am blessed with a
approaching 30
brother-in-law
years.
in Maine. I'm blessed to have a brother-in-law in Maine, so I always hang out here, and during the summer, whenever I can. And there isn't anyone who doesn't know Susan Collins. Literally, everybody has met her or knows her as a Susan Collins story. And I don't know how long she's been in the business, but everybody likes her. Even the Democrats like her. And it's a very
Yeah.
crunchy place. You're right; it's a blue state, but she is the chair of appropriations. And how many? What's she been there? 4 terms already. It's not something you put down the gavel lightly. And if you're a Mainer, you don't want her to.
Yeah, she's been in the Senate since the mid 90s. She was a staffer before that, and she works it. And it's you'd be surprised. I think people would be surprised how many Democrats and Republicans can survive in tough environments and tough states when they work it. Not always, but they can. I mean, Sherrod Brown, until his luck finally ran out, was able to survive in Ohio, which I only bring up you because you're an Ohio guy, because he worked it so hard. Eventually, his luck ran out. And
Now
who knows? I
let's
mean, if
pause on
Collins,
Sherrod. You know that they're trying to recruit him to run against John Houston. And John Houston
I
was a very
know.
popular lieutenant governor, had won 4 statewide elections. I think he's going to win handily in Ohio, which is becoming a redder state. Do you think Sherrod Brown's going to be, or is he going to run for governor, which actually makes more sense
It makes
against
more
Vivek
sense. And
Ramaswamy?
I also think, and we've seen this, that when former senators try to come back, they're not change candidates. And I don't like to, the word retread sounds disrespectful, but we saw this with Bob Kerrey in Nebraska. We saw this with Feingold in Wisconsin. Former senators that try to return often have a really tough time of it, even if they were really well liked and had a really great career politically before they left.
David M. Drucker, that's why we talked to you. Next time we'll cover Michigan and Georgia, which are the other two, but we're out of time now. David M. Drucker, follow him on X at David M. Drucker. Read him in the Dispatch, read his Bloomberg column. Man knows Washington, D.C. and politics like few other people. Thank you, David. I want to tell everyone I am sponsored by Consumer Cellular. And if you are using one of these, and I've always got one with me, and I'm sure you've always got one with you, then you know that you're paying a cell phone bill. Do you know how much you're paying? Do you know? Do you have 2 of these in the house? We do. And I'm wondering, do you have one plan for 2 of them? And if you do you know what you're paying for it? Here's what I want you to do with Consumer Cellular. First of all, remember my code, HUGH25. HUGH25. When you call Consumer Cellular at 800-411-4454, have your cell phone bill in front of you and know what you're buying. Be able to answer their question, because they have plans for you. You probably do not need unlimited data. If you've got teenagers, maybe you do. Okay, if you are a teenager, maybe you do, and you're paying for it for yourself. You probably pretty much do if you want to play the games and watch the movies and do all the stuff that one does on the phone if you're in that demo 18 and under. But if you're in the demo 50 years and older, you do not need unlimited data. But if you want it, just for security's sake, you can get 2 lines of unlimited data. Listen to this, for $60 a month. 2 lines of unlimited data, $60 a month. But you got to go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, consumercellular.com/Hugh. Remember my code, HUGH25, that gets you $5 off each of your first 5 months. When you make the switch, it takes 20 minutes, probably. You'll talk to someone within a minute, probably, and you'll say, thank you, Hugh, probably, at consumercellular.com. 800-411-4454. And please remember, when you're thinking about going out to dinner tonight, don't, and send the money instead to the hill country of Texas, because Food for the Poor is sponsoring the campaign to bring relief to the people in Texas. Call 855-359-4673, tax deductible, 855-359-4673. They're still cleaning up. They're still destroyed. And the banner, Help Texas, is still at the top of HughHewitt.com. I think that's the best place to give. Please be generous and please. President Trump remained in Scotland today and cut the ribbon at the extra 18 that they're adding at the Trump International Links in Scotland. Now it's 36 holes, billed as the greatest links course in the world. I don't know about that. St. Andrews is probably still the best, or at least the most famous. But Donald Trump was doing the course cutting ribbon today, cut number 4.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you to the media. The media's been terrific, believe it or not. I didn't use the word fake news one time, not one time. Today they're not fake news. Today they're wonderful news. But I just want to thank you. They've treated us really well, and they respect what we've done really at a level that you rarely see nowadays. So I really very much appreciate it.
Got to be a pretty good court. They're playing a seniors PGA event there later this year, and they don't play those at know-nothing golf courses. So pretty good deal. Second cut from the Turnberry course ribbon cutting, cut number 5.
Just signed a very big deal, as you know, with the European Union, but also with the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom was a week before, and it's a very big deal and a great deal for the country, and it's a great deal for everybody. So I just want to thank him and everybody that worked so hard on it. They've been trying to get it done for 12 years. We got it done, so somebody did a good job.
All right, we finally also got a Breitbart interview with the president. I don't know if this was done on the ground or on Air Force One, but cut number 7.
And we made a deal where they're going to buy, billions and billions of dollars worth of our product and our energy. They've opened up the entire European Union for free trade, which is something that nobody thought could happen, so that our countries can now go in there and compete, which is a big, it's one of the biggest markets. Might be the biggest market, somebody said, but it's right up there when you add the countries, all of those countries together. And we have the right to work there. We don't pay tariffs, and they will be. We're bringing the tariffs for them to 15%. They're going to buy $600 billion worth of our military equipment. They're going to buy hundreds of billions of dollars of other equipment and $750 billion worth of energy. And it's a great deal for both. I think Europe's going to be very happy with it. They seem to be very happy, and their market's doing good. And it's a deal.
What about our market
good for peace.
today? This market report is brought to you by American Federal. From my new affiliate, 92.3 FM, WZPR in the Outer Banks. If you're going to buy gold, do it with American Federal. I know the owner, Nick Rovich. He's been in the business for 44 years now. And I buy my gold from Nick. I did it in January. I buy it annually. And January is my month. Some people buy monthly. Some people buy quarterly. Some people, like me, just do it once a year. And what I do, maybe you don't do this. You might be a trader. I just am not a trader. I'm a buyer and investor, and I throw it into the safety deposit box, and I forget about it. And it's a hedge against inflation. Been doing it for years, and I would recommend you do it for years. If you have wealth to diversify, do it with American Federal, Nick Rovich and his team. You can call American Federal at 800-221-7694 or visit AmericanFederal.com. If you're a coin collector, they also do that stuff. Now, I had a buddy who inherited a coin collection. He took it in and sat down with Nick, and they sold it to Nick, and they're buying gold from Nick. And so they went both sell them and buy them. And that was because I had met with Nick and I had talked to him, but pretty sharp character, who went and sat down with Nick. And Nick is fair and honest and transparent. All you have to do is sit down and talk with him about it. It's all based on the market price of gold, which today is $3,324 an ounce. That's up $14 today. I think I told you yesterday that might be the bottom for a while because there was a little sell-off. The rest of the market, though, the market report is sponsored by AmericanFederal.com. Did not have a good day, not a terrible day. The Dow was off 0.46%, the S&P off 0.3%, the NASDAQ, tech-heavy NASDAQ, down 0.38%. So 2 days into the week, it's just kind of a blah week, and expect it to stay that way throughout August. I like to remind everyone, traders also leave New York City in August. So market moves are usually pretty desultory. There was not much going on. Now, the trade deal is a big deal, but it's still going to be a while till people figure out how it works and traders know who's going to win. I imagine defense stocks are going to win because Europeans committed to buy quite a lot of military hardware. Energy stocks probably going to do pretty well because they committed to buy a lot of energy in the EU trade deal. But gold is at $3,324 an ounce. If you want to buy some today, do it with Nick Rovich. Very transparent. He and his team will tell you what the commission is. The more you buy, the less you pay in commission. It's a good situation to have. Also want to tell my friends in Nag's Head and all through the Outer Banks. I love the fact I'm on 92.3 FM, WZPR. I really do. I have Hilton Head, a couple of states south, and I've got Nag's Head. Hilton Head and Nag's Head. I love that. And I go inward in both states. I cover the Atlantic coast like nobody else. And I'm top to bottom in California as well in their lunch hour. I love that fact. But to my new listeners, eventually you're going to buy that house. You've been waiting for interest rates to come down. The 10-year ticked down to 4.3 something today, so maybe you got a little break. But they're stuck. They're stuck. And the Fed just isn't moving. So what are you going to do? Are you going to wait and wait and wait? Right now it's a buyer's market. And our friends at andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172, only mortgage broker I read for because they're the guys who have done my loans on both coasts. When I moved from California after 27 years back to the Beltway in 2015, I bought a house with the help of andrewandtodd.com, and they will help you. They will help anyone. They helped Dwayne. They helped so many people in Salem. And I want you to know, no matter who you are, no matter what your circumstance is, it pays to have a phone call with Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian because they're lenders. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. So they actually lend you the money. They underwrite the loan. So if you're a veteran and you don't want to put any money down, that's fine. They do VA loans. FHA loans, they do them for first-time home buyers. It takes a little bit less money down. If you're doing FHA, you got to buy mortgage insurance, though. They'll walk you through that. If you want to get a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, they do that. If you want to buy a second home, they do second home loans, a vacation home. You want to pay off a mortgage and get a new mortgage, whatever it is. But mostly, maybe you just got to move. You were transferred. Maybe you're in the military and you're moving around. That happens a lot. Call them, andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. Soup to nuts. Soup to nuts. You will talk to them as long as you want to talk to them, especially if you're a senior citizen. Please don't do a reverse mortgage with anyone but andrewandtodd.com because they're tricky. They're a little bit tricky. And by that I mean the complications that come. You've got to have a bunch of counseling if you're a senior. Now, they make sense for some people. You want to take money out of your house because its value's gone up really high and you want to get some of that money out and make it work for you so that you can expand your monthly budget. That's called a reverse mortgage. That is tricky. You've got to get counseling, and andrewandtodd.com give it to you. They are the very best in the business at that. So call them, 888-888-1172. Don't just go to the guy or the gal down the block who just happened to decide to go into reverse mortgages because it's a complicated business and it's federally regulated very closely. So please call andrewandtodd.com. They've been in the business for so long, I can't even remember. They've been my sponsor for more than, 10 years. 888-888-1172. If you're moving anywhere and you're buying a house, 888-888-1172. A special welcome to our new affiliate, 92.3 FM WZPR. Now, folks in the Outer Banks, listen to me. I get a lot of information from reading, but I also listen to podcasts. My big three: Commentary Podcast, Ruthless Podcast, National Review, the Editor's Podcast. I also listen to Andy McCarthy whenever he comes up. That's once a week. I also listen to Aviv Rediger, Ask Aviv Anything. I listen to Mary Catherine Ham and Vic Mattis when they're not on hiatus for the summer, getting hammered. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but those are the big three: Commentary, Ruthless, and the Editors from National Review. Well, today's Ruthless podcast feature EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, and he made an announcement there, made news across the United States. So I'm going to borrow 4.5 minutes from them so you can hear the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency explain the endangerment rule and why it's being reopened. Cut number 2.
Yeah, actually later today we're going to be making a big announcement in Indiana. And something that happened back in the Obama administration, 2009, was that they put forward this regulation called the endangerment finding. Now, a lot of people out there listening, they might not know what the endangerment finding is. If you were asked congressional Democrats to describe what it is, the left would say that it means that carbon dioxide is a pollutant, carbon dioxide is an endangerment to human health. They might say methane is a pollutant, methane is an endangerment to human health. And that's an oversimplified, I would say, inaccurate way to describe it. The way they did this was following a Supreme Court case in Massachusetts versus EPA. And the Obama administration said that carbon dioxide, when mixed with a bunch of other well-mixed gases, the greenhouse gases, that it contributes to climate change. How much, they don't say. It's more than zero. And they say that climate change endangers human health. So because of these different mental leaps, and by the way, when it's carbon dioxide mixed with all these well-mixed gases, they were only looking at mobile sources like vehicles, but a bunch of those greenhouse gases aren't even emitted from vehicles. Now, why does all of this matter? Like, right out of the gate here, we're getting very wonky on like what this regulation means. Well, then there were all sorts of different vehicle regulations that followed.
So this is like the endangerment finding in and of itself is the hub to the spoke of the left's environmental agenda, essentially.
So this has been referred to as basically driving a dagger into the heart of the climate change religion. Like there are people who care. I mean, most Americans, we care about the environment. We want clean air, land, and water. Conservatives love the environment, want to be good stewards of the environment. There are people who then, in the name of climate change, are willing to bankrupt the country.
Yep.
In the name of environmental justice, they will get tens of billions of dollars appropriated to their friends rather than actually remediating environmental issues. So they created this endangerment finding, and then they were able to put all these regulations on vehicles, on airplanes, on stationary sources to basically regulate out of existence, in many cases, a lot of forms of segments of our economy. And it costs Americans a lot of money. What's the significance? How big is the endangerment finding? Well, repealing it will be the largest deregulatory action in the history of America. So it's kind of a big deal.
It's incredible. And like you said, it goes beyond just cars. There was huge ripple effects in manufacturing in this country. And if we're going to rebuild our manufacturing base, we have to let people actually do their jobs and build their companies and power their machines.
Yeah, so we announced on March 12th, it was over 30 different deregulatory actions. We put out press releases once every 5 minutes. Apologies, not really, to the environmental reporters here in D.C. who had their inbox flooded.
They seem like a well-adjusted bunch, by the way.
So that night, this guy, Bill Weir or whatever, he's like the chief climate correspondent on CNN. He's on like Keaton Collins' show, and he was criticizing us, saying that we didn't proofread our press releases, that we put out our press releases so quickly that we didn't proofread it. And he says, as an example, he puts a press release of this regulation, which is it's OOOOB/C, so Quad OBC. It's an actual thing. It's an actual rule, and it's regard to the oil and gas industry. And so he puts it up and say, look, this is the chief climate correspondent at CNN. He says, look at this proofreading edit. As an example, it says 0000B/C. It's not even a thing. It's a placeholder. It's like, no, it's an actual rule. And Caitlin Collins was like, whoops, like making it like we really didn't know what we were doing and proofreading it.
I'm certain they did a segment after that explaining how they had misled their audience.
The next day, he ended up going back on air admitting that.
I wanted to play it through that because Lee Zeldin is a fair man. He wanted okay, they did correct themselves, but the key thing here is the endangerment rule is up for grabs, and the endangerment finding was nonsense to begin with. So we'll see where that goes. Big news, going to make a lot of waves in the environmental community, of which I am an alum. Byron York is the chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor like I am. Byron, how are you?
Hugh, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. I want to ruin your mood. I got some Cory Booker for you. Spartacus rose on the floor of the Senate, not within the last couple of hours, I think, and unleashed this tirade, which, Byron York, I'm going to ask you to analyze after you've heard it. Let's play cut number whatever it was.
The Democratic Party needs a wake-up call. I see law firms bending a knee to this president, not caring about the larger principles, that those free speech rights, that you could take on any client, why are you bending the knee? I see universities that should be bastions of free speech bending at the knee to this president. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. I see people who want mergers suddenly think that they have to pay tribute to this president. And what are the very people here elected to defend the Constitution of the United States saying, oh, well, today, let's look the other way and pass some resources that won't go to Connecticut, that won't go to Illinois, that won't go to New York, that will go to the states he likes. That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines. And when it comes to the safety of my state being denied these grants, that's why I'm standing here. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right. And dear God, if you want to come at me that way, you're going to have to take it up with me, because there's too much on the line.
So you're forewarned is forearmed. If you want to say anything negative, you got to take it up with Cory Booker. Spartacus, what do you think?
Well, first of all, we should know that Senator Booker wants to run for president. He wants to be president. He thinks this is the way to do it. And listening to this, I could not help thinking about the Wall Street Journal poll, which I'm sure you've discussed in the last few days, that showed Democrats at their lowest favorability rating in 35 years, well below Republicans and well below President Trump. And what was fascinating about that, this is one of these polls like, do you approve of the way Donald Trump is handling the economy or trade or foreign affairs, et cetera? And then, do you approve? Who do you trust more to handle the economy, trade, foreign affairs in Congress? And so they found that a lot of people did not approve of the way Trump was handling some of these issues, and those same people said they still trusted Republicans to handle them more than Democrats.
Yep.
So it's a party in deep trouble. Now,
do you know in that poll they only had 8% very enthusiastic about Democrats? 8%.
Well, that's who Senator Booker is talking to.
I guess he is.
And so, if you want to run for president, and you want to, you're a Democrat and you want to recover, I mean, there's a couple of ways you can go. There's the progressive fight lane, and that's what Senator Booker has chosen. But he's also got AOC. Bernie Sanders is not running for president, but he's sort of, I think, setting the tone for what those Democrats want to do. Or you can be one of the small, endangered minority of Democrats who think, we actually are kind of out of touch, and we need to fix things, and we need to handle issues better, and we need to stop screaming about Stephen Colbert.
Let me ask you, Byron, do you think it is persuasive to anyone to shout on an empty Senate floor? It's really like Grandpa Simpson shaking his hand at the clouds. Does it really mean anything?
Wasn't it years and years ago that, the rule with C-SPAN on the Senate and House floor is that they wouldn't show the galleries, when or the whole Senate, the floor, when one senator was talking. And so a lot of times in the House you had members come up and make these impassioned speeches to an absolutely empty House, which meant, of course, they were doing it for TV, and they were hoping it would get shown back in their districts. And then there was one mischievous person who showed video of a member of the House screaming at an empty House, and now it's become kind of commonplace to see this. So, look, Senator Booker thinks this is the way it's gonna work. Now, this lane did not work. This progressive lane did not lead to the nomination in 2020. Remember,
it's the yelling lane too. It's not just the progressive lane; it's the yelling lane.
It is. Well, there is a strain of politician who believes that if you want to convey sincerity and belief, you need to yell. That if you just say something, people might not think you really believe it with all your heart. But if you yell it, then they'll know that you believe that. And in fact, people might look and say, well, that's kind of weird.
All right, Byron, you've been doing this a while, so have I. Are there any Clinton Democrats left? I mean, I know some, but they're not in office. So
any who are within, shouting distance of running for president of the United States, I'm not sure. And the party had to have that reckoning. The Democratic Party had to have that reckoning in 1992 because they had lost in 1980, they'd lost in 1984, and they'd lost in 1988. And there were still Democrats in 1992 who said it was a messaging problem, that they just needed better communications. And Bill Clinton and the Democratic Leadership Council, to their credit, said, no, it's more than that. Maybe we really are soft on crime. Maybe we really are soft on the Soviet Union, and we need to fix these things. Is there something like that in the Democratic Party today? I don't see it. It could be out there. They could have a person who turns out to be a great candidate, but I don't see it.
I sure hope one of them decides to try, because I think that lane's wide open. In the meantime, I hope the Republicans, because I am a Republican, begin to move a little bit to the center and talk about some things that might be, because it's just a wide open to take it all. Obama blew it. He did not go to the center. Biden did not go to the center. They had opportunities to do that, and they did not do that. Both of them went to the left. Byron York, always a pleasure. Follow him on X at Byron, B-Y-R-O-N, York. Easy to remember, easy to spell. Wonderful to follow, wonderful to read in the Washington Examiner or see on the Fox News channel. Thank you, Byron. Look, it's not just Cory Booker who's melting down. Chuck Schumer's melting down as well. Cut number 15, Chuck Schumer on the floor today.
Trump would have you believe it's the biggest deal ever. That's his words. Dangling $250 billion of new energy purchases and more in new investments. There's just one hiccup. It's fake. Even today's Wall Street Journal has pierced this miasma of distortion.
Miasma of distortion. Now, do you prefer the rapidly aging and monotone of Chuck Schumer to the wildly eccentric Cory Booker? Which one do you prefer hearing from? Or perhaps Pete Buttigieg on NPR today, no longer publicly funded, so it's not really NPR, it's NR. National radio. Steve Inskeep was a friend of mine on the radio pal. I like Steve, but he's a lefty. Pete Buttigieg today talking to Steve, cut number 11.
Would you endorse him? Say Big Ten approach. I don't agree with him about everything, but I endorse him. He's a
he
Democrat.
hasn't asked me to endorse. I'm not really a player in New York City municipal politics, but I would talk to him about it. Sure.
Mm-hmm. You would talk to him about it.
Yeah.
So he's talking about Mamdani, and the next question should be, are you concerned about his refusal to condemn the thing, globalize the Intifada? Because I sure am. That's actually a call for genocide against the Jews everywhere. And so Mamdani should condemn. It's pretty easy to say, I'm against genocide of the Jews again. I am very much for this. This is Relief Factor, sponsor of my show, sponsor of this studio, in fact. They build the studio, and I thank Relief Factor for doing so. I'm Studio North, Studio West, Studio Beltway, and they're all Relief Factor studios. But the key thing is, I'm taking it twice today, because T-Rex Teddy is in town. And when T-Rex Teddy is in town, that means I'm usually his attendant. That's usually my designated job, is just to attend to Teddy. And I had 3.5 hours this morning with a whacked hamstring, which in all my years, to my new affiliate in the Outer Banks, I have been a runner. Actually, I was a racer, then I was a runner, now I'm a trundler. And I have never not done it. I've always been able to get at least 20 miles in a week for as long as I've been doing it, back to the time I was 20. And done my marathon, done my half marathons, done my 10Ks, and I love to do it, but you got to take Relief Factor if you're going to be a weekend warrior or a daily athlete. Whether you're a walker, a runner, a racer, you say, what's the difference, Hugh? Racers are under 8 minutes a mile, runners are between 8 and 10, trundlers are between 10 and 15, and walkers are over 50. Whatever you are, if you're getting your miles in or you're going to the gym, whatever, you need Relief Factor. And when you do something like I did, you got to take it twice a day, which is what I'm doing today. And if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, or you are listening in the Outer Banks on our brand new affiliate, and I'm so glad to have the Outer Banks, 92.3 FM, WZPR. I'll be able to talk to you about this big North Carolina Senate race all year long, thanks to Relief Factor. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go to their website, relieffactor.com. Find the starter pack, $19.95. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Thank you for listening, especially if you're listening on 92.3 FM, WZPR, our brand new affiliate, with the entire Salem lineup down on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, beginning in Nags Head, covering the entire Outer Banks. We love the Outer Banks. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I have been there many times. Family goes there often, and we are very, very happy to have that part of the state covered, because, boy, do you have an important Senate race coming up. Probably Michael Whatley will be the Republican nominee. Probably Democrat Roy Cooper will be the Democratic nominee in a seat of the retiring Tom Tillis. Very important for the Republicans to hang on to that. I think North Carolina is actually a red state, And I think Michael Whatley, Chairman Whatley, very good candidate. I know Governor Cooper won twice statewide, but it's a weak governor, state, not really important who the governor is there. And the entire legislature's got supermajority Republicans, so something doesn't add up. And I don't think Roy Cooper is exactly going to light the barn on fire anytime soon. But we are very, very glad to add 92.3 FM WZPR, the voice for all of the Salem radio affiliates. Also, you can watch us when you're home at night and you don't want to listen in the car, watch on the Salem News Channel. Now, I want to begin with the story that President Netanyahu and Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump today accused Europeans of rewarding Hamas by recognizing a Palestinian state. That is absolutely correct. There's no other way to there's no other way to read that. It's a disaster. I began the program by providing you with some statistics. I want to repeat them now because I think it's important for people to know. Gaza is exactly 140 square miles. Not exactly. It's maybe 141 square miles. So you say, how big is that? It's not very big. Not very big at all. But it's run by Hamas, and it has been since 2008, when there was a bloody coup against Fatah, and the PLA has no bones there. Hamas has run it since 2008. So for 17 years, they've done nothing prior to 2000. They've done nothing but terrorize people since then. Now there is a food crisis being alleged by everyone because Hamas keeps killing people trying to bring food and stealing the food when they try to bring the food. Israel has tried to distribute the food in Gaza a dozen different ways. Now, I want you to imagine how difficult this is. Gaza is 140 square miles. Disneyland is 43 square miles. So Disney World. So essentially, Gaza is 3 Disney Worlds big. Not very big. There are a total, according to the United Nations Satellite Center, from the data just before the attack on 10/7 of 23, there were 250,000 structures. Structures. Now, a structure can be a home, it can be an apartment building, it can be a store, it can be a garage, it can be, but there are 250,000 structures in 140 square miles. Now, imagine 250,000 structures in Disney World times 3, and you get the idea how dense. It is denser than Manhattan. It is denser than Hong Kong. 2.1 million people live in the 140 square miles. And terrorism bred there. They took all the billions in aid that they got for 17 years. And what did they use it for? They built a tunnel system in which to hide themselves and their captives after they launched an invasion of Israel, which they did on 10/7/23, murdering 1,200 Israelis, kidnapping 250. They only have 20 hostages alive left. Now, the IDF has the task of finding, as does Mossad, as does Shin Bet, finding those 20 people and hopefully getting them back. And Israel has tried to negotiate a ceasefire, and of course, Hamas keeps walking away. In this situation, against this backdrop, France has announced it's going to recognize Palestine as a state, and Great Britain said they're going to recognize Palestine as a state unless Israel engages in a peace process. Now, this is so bizarre, I don't even really know how to characterize it. It is grandstanding for new left-wing populations, primarily Muslim populations that have moved to France since Algeria collapsed on the French colonial project 80 years ago. Many, many hundreds of thousands of Muslims live in the United Kingdom as well, and Keir Starmer has a 412-seat majority in the Parliament of the United Kingdom, but he got it with 35% of the vote, maybe 32% of the vote, because the first past the post system, the one in every seat, the 635 seats of Parliament, whoever gets the most votes wins. If there are 3 candidates, and there were often 4 candidates with the Tories, Labour, Scottish National Party, and Reform. Labour, the Tories have been around forever, and they didn't do anything. They blew their mandate. And when they blew their mandate, Labour walked in. But I doubt Great Britain is really in favor of siding with the terrorists. Let's be clear. That's what France is doing. That's what Great Britain is doing. Why is there a food crisis in Gaza? I don't believe there's a famine. This is the 3rd time, as Noah Rothman explained earlier today, the 3rd time this UN agency has called famine in 3 years, and no famine was there the first 2 times. There isn't a famine there now. There is difficulty in getting aid because Hamas kills people who try to get it, and Hamas kills people who try to deliver it. And Hamas hijacks it, steals it, and sells it at exorbitant prices to keep their 15,000 estimated terrorists going. So you got 15,000 people holding 20 live Israelis and 2.1 million Palestinians hostage. Now, Hamas is a brutal, vindictive terrorist organization recognized as such by the United States. It's also running out of gas. The reason it's running out of gas is because Iran was leveled by Israel and then by the United States. They haven't got anything left. They're out of gas, and they will run out of gas. So Israel is just going to flood as much food as they possibly can from the sky by trucks, any way they can. They're going to open a humanitarian corridor. They're going to let the UN run it down. They're going to let Hamas have it. They will not be accused of abetting the starvation or this food shortage because it's not their fault. It's the terrorists' fault. But I want you to visualize the difficulty. You just can't, they're not going to level the place. How did we beat the terrorist state of Japan when it was Imperial Japan in 1941 through 1945? Fire bombs and atomic bombs. That's what we did. Our civilian to combatant ratio was way higher than what Israel has done. How did Great Britain beat Germany? How did the United States beat Germany? How did the French resistance beat Germany when the Nazis and Hitler were in charge? Bombing, sometimes firebombing their cities. Churchill, I'm listening to Andrew Roberts' biography of Churchill right now. Even he would look at the pictures and say, "Are we beasts?" That's a direct quote. "Are we beasts?" Because what we were doing, and they kept doing it. They kept doing it because it was they had to end the war. They had to end the war. Now, I don't know what Israel is cooking up, but whatever they're cooking up, they can't just say, we're going to turn our back. Or can they? I heard it discussed on Commentary today by Jonathan Shamser, who has written a piece for Commentary suggesting that Israel just throw in the flag and say we're done. We're not going to do anything more about Gaza. I don't think that's actually viable. At a minimum, they've got to annex 3 or 4 miles closest to the border. I wouldn't be surprised to see a major military base put there. Now, it could come under indirect fire, but a certain barrier of at least 2, 3, 4 miles so that we never have another 10-7. And probably down the north-south as opposed to the east-west border as well. They're going to have to wall it off the way Egypt has walled it off. Now, I just want you to know, until the 1967 war caused by the Arab states surrounding Israel, Gaza belonged to the Egyptians. Egypt had Gaza. They're Egyptians before they were Palestinians. Now they're Palestinians, and we understand that. But Egypt will not do anything to alleviate the humanitarian problem in Gaza. Israel's doing it all the lifting, and they're not going to let Hamas rearm. They're not going to let them get more cement to rebuild tunnels. They're not going to let them get more ammunition, more rockets. They're out of gas. They're absolutely out of gas. Now, the people of Gaza are suffering, and in fact, of the 254,000 structures, at the end of last year, the UNOSAT, again, that's the UN satellite imagery, found that 60,000 of them had been destroyed of the 254,000 structures. 20,000 severely damaged. So you got 80,000 structures destroyed or severely damaged. Another 56,000 structures moderately damaged, and it goes on. 170,000 structures out of the 254,000 structures have been damaged. That's what Hamas bought on itself when they took the captives and when they killed the innocents. That's what a terrorist state gets. And France and Great Britain are applauding. That's what they're doing. Make no mistake about it. They're applauding. Because Macron is a lame duck and Keir Starmer has a left wing that's nuts. And therefore, do not pay attention to those places. We got to get Michael Waltz confirmed into the UN so that we have our representative there to veto all the silly resolutions the Security Council will be presented with by its permanent members, Britain and France, to condemn Israel. Israel is the equal of all of our allies. It is a better ally than Great Britain and France because it does not do stupid stuff like this. In my travels, I meet interesting people. When I meet interesting people, I ask them to be guests on the program. One of them is Mark Ellis, who joins me now. Mark is senior editor at Assist News, and he's got the coolest website in the world, godreports.com. When he told me about it, I knew I had to have him on the program. Mark, welcome. Where do we find you today?
Capistrano Beach, California.
Yeah, I love Capo Beach. Where I lived when I was a young man in 1978, Beach Road. I love it to death. Mark, tell people about God Reports and Assist News and what you do.
God Reports was set up to support and encourage Christian missions, and we do that by collecting stories and testimonies from the mission field and stories of general interest to Christian believers. We use those stories to inspire people to get involved in missions, to give, pray, go on a short-term trip. And the stories we like to choose are ones that really inspire faith.
Now, Mark, how did you get to reserve godreports.com? Who thought that up? Because that's really a unique website, godreports.com.
It's funny because I originally wanted God's stories. That was taken, and I decided on God Reports. This is back in 2008 and 2009. That's when we first went live.
And how has it prospered? It obviously has prospered well because it's a very well-produced website. I read a few of the stories just before the program. I encourage everyone to go over it. It's updated constantly, godreports.com. How did this come about?
I took my first overseas mission trip to the southern Philippines in 2004 to visit two Bible translators. And they lived in a house that was the size of my two-car garage. They had to be evacuated from that house twice, one under threat from communist guerrillas, another under threat from Islamists. And over the time that they translated the Bible, the wife got breast cancer and overcame that. Their son fell from a tree and was partially paralyzed. So I saw all these sacrifices that they made to bring the Bible to this tribal group, the Tagabawa. And as I was flying home, I thought I could write their story, but how many other missionaries are out there with inspiring stories to tell? What if I create a website to start collecting these stories and use them to inspire service?
So, Mark, there are literally hundreds of thousands of listeners who have done a short-term mission trip. Mine have been in Mexico. Other people, my wife has gone to Jericho to serve the Palestinian population there. There have been, there's got to be a gazillion people who've done short-term mission trips. Is there any other website that covers them like godreports.com?
Well, a lot of mission trips are affiliated with a mission organization. So they will often be posting stories and videos of these trips. And if you go on YouTube and you just type in Christian mission trip, you'll be getting a regular supply of people posting trips like we do. And we try to select the best of those videos for our website.
Oh, so you're editing from online content. I didn't get that. By the way, not only were the Ellises and the Hewitts together on the Hillsdale cruise, we ran into them in the theater in London. So we have very similar tastes, and we love Capo Beach, even though I'm on the East Coast, now he's on the West Coast. So we are very simpatico. But tell me, in terms of the plethora of number that you have before you, if you actually are looking at all those mission trip videos, how do you pick the ones that you post and draw attention to?
Well, there's a certain quality of a trip that I'm attracted to, and that's where you see real spiritual engagement with the people that are there. I mean, there are many trips where people do a project where they're painting a wall or helping, some kind of a project like that. But I love to see the interaction with the children, with the adults in meaningful ways that help build their faith.
You are also the senior editor of Assist News. What is that?
That website is devoted strictly to persecution issues. And sadly, Christian persecution has been rising the last 5 years. And that's something that's a burden on my heart, and I'm sure on yours as a fellow believer.
Well, I've been following the Syrian situation very, very closely. And of course, after the collapse of the Assad regime, some Christians were massacred by, I don't know if it was the regime or not. I'm not in a position to judge, but they were massacred not long thereafter. So yes, and in Nigeria, a Roman Catholic priest was just freed. I've got a friend in Anchorage. He had been a priest in the Anchorage. Not many people who are taken by Boko Haram get away. Unfortunately, is that a website, assist.com, or is that covered at God Reports as well?
Assist.net covers the persecution issues, and God Reports covers a broad range of stories other than persecution. But you may be aware that 2 days ago, a Catholic church was attacked in eastern Congo, and 38 people were killed, men, women, and children.
No,
yes,
I did not know
by
that.
Fulani militants who are actually affiliated with ISIS. So that one was terrible. They attacked right after midnight during an all-night prayer vigil. So just a horrible, horrible incident in that part of the world.
So, Mark, it is generally said, it's often said, that the persecuted church gets zero attention in the legacy media. Do you think that's correct?
Here and there, you see it covered. I think what happened in the Middle East with a lot of displaced people, that got some attention after the Iraq War and just all the disruption that's been happening in Syria and in other places. So it does occasionally merit attention, but in my mind, it needs more attention.
Absolutely. Assist.net. You and I did not talk about assist.net. We just talked about godreports.com because assist.net is pretty difficult stuff to think about and pray about, but godreports.com is kind of fun. Is that how you divide it in your mind?
Well, I mean, I love the encouraging stories, the stories that build faith that we put on God Reports, the stories that show that God is still active and on the move, just as he was in the book of Acts. And that encourages me and I think other believers. And then there are the tough stories that, our hearts go out to those people. And there's a balance there. I couldn't cover just the hard stories all the time. I like to have a balance in my life.
Oh, I hear you. That's how I do my show. Just very quickly, are they growing? Are people visiting godreports.com and assist.net?
We had about 500,000 page views on God Reports last year. We actually were sad to say during the 2020 presidential campaign, ourselves and other conservative Christian media were suppressed by Google and other social media. And we had probably close to 4 million views in 2019, and that dropped off after that suppression.
Well, then we will work to bring it back up. Godreports.com and assist.net. Mark Ellis, good to see you across the country all that way. Enjoy a fine, cool evening in Capo Beach. I botched the second website there talking to Mark Ellis. It's assistnews.com, assistnews.com. And indeed, they have a story on the brutal attack in the eastern Congo this past Sunday. 38 people killed in a Roman Catholic Church service that was going all night in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, but this was in eastern Congo, not western Congo. And I haven't seen that anywhere. I just confirmed it, Vatican News as well, assistnews.com, confirmed by Vatican News. How brutal. And have you heard about it? Anywhere. Maybe you get the Vatican News service, but bookmark assistnews.com if you want to find out what's going on in the persecuted church around the world. Godreports.com for everything else. And I'm very glad to have made the acquaintance of Mark Ellis. We spend a lot of time praying for the 20 people who are held hostage in Gaza, and we should, and we will continue to do so. You just wonder why the savagery in the Democratic Republic of Congo gets no coverage, zero coverage. Now, Nigerian atrocities sometimes do. The persecuted church in China very rarely does because they're just ubiquitous. The Chi-Com party is everywhere. Chinese Communist Party is everywhere, and they're watching everyone and everything, and they're big, big stick, and they wield it. They've got Jimmy Lai in solitary confinement. They've got, they're translating the Bible differently, using Mandarin versions and including stuff that's not in the Bible. They've suppressed Christian music completely or taken over the Christian music industry in China. But the brutality in Africa doesn't seem to matter to anyone. Now, there aren't going to be any mission trips to the Democratic Republic of Congo. In fact, the number of mission trips have dropped off dramatically in Mexico when violence soared there over the last 2 decades. It used to be a rather routine thing for churches across the United States to go to Mexico and build a house or build a church or to expand a community center, do things. But when it gets dangerous, not only do you not go, you don't want to go, and you don't help the local church by doing that. But I hope you will visit assistnews.com occasionally and godreports.com. That's at assistnews.net. Geez, how often do I have to get it wrong? But they're not a sponsor, right? Mark is not a sponsor. He's just a friend that I met while traveling. I like to bring people stories like that and open the eyes of people. I am by nowhere, any measure, a missionary-minded person. Many people are. The new pope was. New pope left Chicago and went to Peru for 25 years or however long he was a missionary in Peru. One of my law school roommates goes to Peru often. I've got a friend, Bud, who's been pretty much everywhere in the world on mission trips. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt has done them. I'm a studio journalist, and so I'm staying home most of the time, and it's quite a production to get 2 weeks off, much less a mission trip type off. So I want to just tell you, at least keep him in your prayers and support him when you can. Not Mark. Mark was not asking for money. Mark is not a sponsor. Mark's just telling the stories. And I think that's a very, very valuable thing to do. So Mark, assistnews.net, assistnews.net, and godreports.com. Now I want to go back to the secular world, not just the sectarian world, and go back to violence in Cincinnati this week, which was black on white violence. Very unfortunate. J.D. Vance addressed it in the Canton, Ohio today. Cut number 10.
There was a group of people who attacked a couple folks on the street in Cincinnati. Senator Bernie Moreno, some others have spoken out about it, have been critical of it.
Okay, yes. So what I saw, and I haven't seen the full context, but what I saw is a mob of lawless thugs beating up on an innocent person, and it's disgusting. And I hope every single one of those people who engage in violence is prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And they will be. They will be so long as law enforcement in the state of Ohio takes their job seriously. I know Dave Yost cares a lot about these things. But yeah, I actually, you're right. Bernie did send me a clip of this, and we talked a little bit about it. I don't know the full context. I don't know how the fight started. But the one part that I saw that was really gruesome is you had a grown man who sucker punched a middle-aged woman. And where I come from, at least, when you have a grown man who sucker punches a middle-aged woman, that person ought to go to jail for a very long time. And frankly, he's lucky there weren't some better people around, because they would have handled it themselves. But if they're not going to handle it, the cops in Cincinnati, the law enforcement, you've got to prosecute people. We've had way too much lawlessness on the streets of great American cities. How many of you all have wanted to go to downtown Akron or downtown Canton or downtown Columbus for a meal, but you're worried because the local authorities in these big cities have allowed lawlessness to run wild? We have got to make great American cities safe again for families and children. If you want to take your wife or your children out for a meal, you shouldn't be worried about street violence. And the only way to destroy that street violence is to take the thugs who engage in that violence and throw their asses in prison.
J.D. Vance speaking truth to truth. And I think it's very well spoken. Good word by the vice president there. Throw their butts in prison. A special welcome to our new affiliate, 92.3 FM WZPR in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Now you're in for a treat. One of my weekly guests is James Lilacs of Minnesota. And Lilacs is featured there from his den of iniquity in some suburb. Well, it's not actually a burb. You're actually in the city of Minneapolis, aren't you, James?
In Minneapolis proper, although when it was first set up, it was intended as a suburb for the plutocrats to have a nice respite from the malarial airs of the inner city.
Well, we have, Lilacs has been talking to me for almost the 25 years I've been on the program, and now he's about his memoir. So, James, how is the memoir going?
Well, mind you, I'm doing this only because you asked me to, but it's really been good in these retirement days that I've had. I'm up to 4th grade. When I put out the first issue of my first newspaper, to the great acclaim of my classmates. And it failed after one issue, thereby, sort of anticipating a lot of the career choices I would make in the future. But one of the reasons I think that the people liked it in 4th grade so much was the smell of ditto fluid that came off the mimeographed pages.
Oh, I love that smell.
And it reminds me that if the newspapers of today actually perfumed their editions with Ditto fluid, they would probably sell much more than they did, and they would keep that installed boomer base that seems to be leaving them by the droves every day.
Now, Lilacs, when you went out of business in the fourth grade, did you resurrect your journalism career in high school in Fargo?
I did. I started running a call. I skipped the whole reporting part where you actually have to listen to people and quote and talk and get things accurate, and went directly to the opinion section of the Fargo, the high school newspaper. So I wrote something there. Yeah, that was it. I mean,
Are you going to collect those for the memoir?
No, I have tracked down every issue, burned them. I've actually had Serbian assassins silence the people who may have seen them, which is why the class reunions are smaller in number than they may have been. So no, nobody's going to see that stuff, Hugh.
I think that should be part of the memoir. Now, before we go deeper in the memoir, I need your current events evaluation because Spartacus, a.k.a. Senator Cory Booker, took to the Senate floor today. Have you heard this yet?
No, I have not.
All right, play James Lilacs, cut number 16.
The Democratic Party needs a wake-up call. I see law firms bending a knee to this president, not caring about the larger principles, that those free speech rights, that you could take on any client, why are you bending the knee? I see universities that should be bastions of free speech bending at the knee to this president. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. I see people who want mergers suddenly think that they have to pay tribute to this president. And what are the very people here elected to defend the Constitution of the United States saying, oh, well, today, let's look the other way and pass some resources that won't go to Connecticut, that won't go to Illinois, that won't go to New York, that will go to the states he likes. That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines. And when it comes to the safety of my state being denied these grants, that's why I'm standing here. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right. And dear God, if you want to come at me that way, you're going to have to take it up with me. Because
okay, I wanted you to hear that warning, James. Before you commented, I wanted you to be fully informed, and you have been warned. So I wanted him also to see. I see dead people, but he didn't say that. It would have been perfect. But what do you think?
I am here for the police officers. I'm here for the Constitution, and that's why I'm a Democrat. I mean, do these guys, did they just wake up and find out that there are some things going on? Because it's impossible to make the arguments he's making without looking back at previous administrations, at the misuse of powers, at the complete abandonment of the police, of the trashing of the Constitution when it comes to any number of things that you want to talk about. And so I may be well-intentioned and honest and genuine, but I would have believed it a little bit more if he'd been upset that things had happened in the previous administration. Nobody killed Colbert because Colbert didn't bend the knee. He killed Colbert because he was losing $40 million a year. Nobody at the universities would have any problem if they hadn't allowed ravening hordes of foaming at the mouth, screaming, shrieking, blue-haired septum ring Jew haters to go through their schools and chant a whole bunch of things about bringing the Intifada to our very shores. So, a little bit more nuance to some of his points might have done him a little bit better. But, this is not...
Now, James, you're from a deep blue state, although I have a scoop I can't report. You're going to have a pretty good Senate candidate, I think, on the Republican side. But you're a deep blue state. Do you feel cut off by the authoritarian Donald Trump?
No, I don't at all. But no, I mean, this is a bifurcated state. This is a very, 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 very cobalt blue metro area. And outside, it is not. Outside, it's a lot more diverse. Maybe purple. I mean, like a bruise, the farther you get away from the wound of the Twin Cities, you get a purplish then. And then you get out in the rest of it, and it's more red. So I wouldn't say, Minnesota in the aggregate, when you count its votes, the metro determines practically everything else, it seems. But, no, we are, we'll see how the next mayoral election goes. Because if indeed the people of Minneapolis say, yes, democratic socialism, that's what we need, then you can pretty much count the city as having tumbled into the tumbril for the next few years or so.
Well, I don't want to talk about Comrade Mom Donnie, but I do want to ask you, Mr. Booker, Senator Booker appears to be running for president, as does your governor, Tim Walz. If you were obliged to vote for one or the other of them for president, which one would you vote for?
Must you? Absolutely must you? No. I don't know. Well, I mean, Booker is more interesting in Booker. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's my first cup of coffee after my nap. Booker is more interesting rhetorically because he's certainly got gumption and speed and power, and he's standing up gesticulating wildly. I like his gestures better than I like Tim Walz's. If you were to force me to vote for either one of the two, I would base it on things such as the gestures, because Walz's gestures don't seem to be particularly impressive, but he has a bit too frothy of a personality that lacks gravitas. Booker's got gravitas. I'll give him that.
Does he? Do you think? I disagree. I think shouting, you lose all gravitas when you shout.
No, comparatively speaking, I don't think that either one of them exactly is necessarily overwhelmed.
He does have the Senate backdrop. He's got the Senate backdrop. Lilacs, we're out of time. I can't even get to Social Security, which I want to talk to you about next week. But the memoir will be up to 5th grade next week?
Up to 5th grade next week when I think I am beaten up by the bully who was wearing crutches at the time.
All right, lilacs.com, and you got to go listen to this podcast as well, The Diner. All things lilacs at lilacs.com. Got a great Substack as well. Thank you, James. Bad news from the Wall Street Journal to conclude the show today. AI is wrecking an already fragile job market for college graduates. Companies have long leaned on entry-level workers to do grunt work that doubles as on-the-job training. Now ChatGPT and other bots do many of these chores. 3 bylines on this story. What do you hire a 22-year-old college graduate for these days? A growing number of bosses, the answer is not much. AI can do the work instead. At Chicago recruiting firm Hirewell, marketing agency clients have all but stopped requesting entry-level staff. Young grads once in high demand, but whose work is now a home run for AI, the firm's chief growth officer said. Dating app Grindr is hiring more seasoned engineers, foregoing some junior coders straight out of school. And CEO George Harrison said companies are, quote, going to need less and less people at the bottom. Bill Balderas, CEO of the Columbus-based consulting firm Futurity, said he decided not to hire a summer intern this year, opting to run social media copy through ChatGPT instead. I'm very sorry, college graduates. Learn something like accounting. Learn some computer science, or at least take the English classes that prepare you to teach English to high school students. The good side of this is the talent might actually go back into teaching out of college. That would be a good thing. You know what else is a good thing? Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I always want to remind you about it for the 3rd time in as many hours, especially our new listeners down on the Outer Banks. Relief Factor makes every day easier. Relief Factor makes the studio possible. Relief Factor makes me ready to go out and face T-Rex Teddy for 3 more weeks, and I'm happy to do so. We spend all morning running around, then all afternoon preparing and afternoon broadcasting, and, it's great that way. But I couldn't do it without Relief Factor, and I can't get my miles in with T-Rex Teddy around, much less the rest of Genghis Kate and the rest of the gang that's coming. So, try it for yourself. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. Ask for the starter pack, $19.95, 3-week supply. Try it. You take 3 a day for the first week, 2 a day for the second week, 1 a day thereafter, and you'll feel great. You'll feel better. Help your anti-inflammatory system. Do not live with the minor aches and pains that go with life. Or just go direct to their website, relieffactor.com. Find the starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day, relieffactor.com. Final word today, do not forget our friends in the Hill Country of Texas. Help Texas is the banner atop HughHewitt.com. Please remember that they need your help. Please just go over there and find it. The phone number is 855-359-4673. I can say it by heart, 855-359-4673. Don't have copy in front of me. I just know it because I've told you so much about it, because I believe so much in Food for the Poor and what they are standing up and sponsoring. They're getting aid down to the people in the Hill Country of Texas. But the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com is the easiest. You can also text my name, Hewitt, to 51555. But if you call 855-359-4763, you can get your money there. $50 sends another box of supplies to those people, and they are very much in need of it.